Hello, folks. Welcome back to the Straightforward Farming Podcast. I'm your host, Tony Reed, alongside Nick McCormick, Kelly McCormick, and Carolyn Reed.
Hello, folks.
Hello.
What do you guys want to talk about this evening? I think this should be just a free-for-all.
I'm good with that.
Just an all-out, anything you got on your mind, get it off your chest. What do you guys want to talk about? Politics?
Where you at, Kelly?
The
Go
war.
ahead.
Yeah.
No, I'm not starting. I am not starting.
Oh, come on.
No,
Don't be
Ladies
that person.
first.
Yeah.
it's my first night here. I'm not starting.
Okay, so has anybody heard of any good conspiracy theories lately? Like really good? Like, I'm not into this whole Trump's still president, blah, blah, blah. That's bullshit. But, like, have you heard, like, any good...
No, he is.
I'm sorry, he is not.
I haven't heard any good conspiracies lately, but I'll go on a tirade here. And for those of you that are Facebook friends with me, and don't take offense if you're not, because I haven't honored a request there for quite some time, because I don't do a lot of it. But so we all saw that Juwan Howard punched a coach or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And now we're going to eliminate handshakes because we can't keep people from slapping people.
Are you serious?
That's their solution to it. How about the solution is people just be, normal grown adults and you don't hit somebody after the game.
Yeah.
Like if
Michigan
if
always
can't
had
walk
thug players.
They're always thugs. Always thugs.
Red Power Stew, if you're watching, the fucking people go to college in your state are thugs.
We can't knock him because Juwan's from Chicago, I believe, which is no shocker that he's a thug. But what a crock of shit. If my kid can't walk through the handshake line and be a man and just shake hands like a normal person, then just walk to the locker room.
I agree. I agree.
Michael Jordan had how many battles with the Knicks, Celtics, Lakers, whoever. I never saw him slap anybody.
Yeah.
Not that he's the standard by which we're measuring it, but it's ridiculous. If you can't do that, then let's just cancel sports in general.
Yep. I would be all about that.
On the handshake line, we'll give you two options. We're canceling sports altogether, or you can learn how to shake hands like a man after the game and don't be a candy ass. That's your option.
Yep.
Candy ass or not.
I
Take your
agree.
pick.
I agree.
Anyway,
what say you guys? What do you think?
I don't know what you guys are talking. I don't know what you guys are talking about.
So
Honestly.
the coach at Michigan,
Okay.
there was a big game between Ohio,
It was Michigan State, or it was Michigan and Wisconsin.
Michigan and Wisconsin. So at the end of the game, when the players all line up to shake hands, the Michigan coach punched an assistant coach from Ohio or from Wisconsin,
Yeah.
and it turned into this big brawl. And so all we're saying is, if you can't
So now
take a punch, you shouldn't be a coach.
Now they want to cancel handshake lines. Their solution is to get rid of handshake lines.
Well, no, just get rid of stupid people.
Exactly. Or let them fight it out. Draw a circle. There's already one in the middle. Let them battle it out. That's your deal.
I don't understand that at all.
It's ridiculous.
I
Anyway,
had not heard
total
of that.
side topic to it, but if you can't deal with it, don't play.
Yeah.
I think I would be on board with that.
You think so?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, I think, honestly, I think he should be fired for unsportsmanlike behavior. He's being a bad example for the students that he's leading.
15-yard penalty. Unsportsmanlike conduct.
In hockey, they'd give you a 15-minute break while you caught your breath so you could fight again.
They would
But
put
still.
you in timeout, basically.
Yeah.
That's
I'm
what
not
they
gonna-
would do. They're like, nope, you're in timeout. Go sit over here.
I'm mostly just surprised when Nick started talking that he went down that route. Like, I thought, and now we're going to talk about how feminism is ruining the world.
Feminism has ruined the world.
I'm
has
not
ruined the world.
disagreeing with you. I am not disagreeing with you, but I really thought that was the road that he was
what
going
a
down.
movement that is. But I'm gonna stop it there.
So let's go down. Let's go down this road.
Let's actually go down
We've
this
all
road.
drank enough. I mean, we've got
go down.
No.
look at all that shit. But nonetheless, so I personally think it's hilarious. This swimmer that's just kicking the shit out of all these women in all their sports. I think it's great.
432nd in the men's division.
Exactly.
And he's leading the women's.
So as women, what say you? Either one.
Kelly,
Do you-
you can go first.
I think he's a biological male and he shouldn't be participating in women's sports.
I agree.
Absolutely not.
So
And I think that the feminists are really dropping the ball here by not doing anything.
Oh,
so I think it's funny from the aspect that this is what they wanted, that everybody gets included.
exactly.
So now we're going to just shatter all the records and basically set women's sports back 85 years.
Yeah.
So to me, if that's how we're going to do it, then more power to you.
We don't need both teams.
No.
We just have a team, and you can make that team.
Yep.
Yeah.
So as someone who I run, not competitively by any means with anybody or whatever.
Because I can beat you.
What if tonight
You
chased you in
can,
a truck?
but you know why you can beat me? Because you are a male
You have
and I am a
testosterone.
female, and that is the big difference. And so, as someone who understands that, it infuriates me that we are even going down this path at all. Like, women and men are biologically made different. We cannot do the same things. So instead of embracing our differences and being like, well, I can do this, he can't do this, vice versa, whatever, we're like, oh no, we need to be equal.
This is what I've tried to tell you when you're like, pick your shit up off the floor. I'm like, I biologically can't. That is your job.
Now, time out. I did not say that. I did not
I know,
say
I
Be
that.
a good human being,
No.
Tony. Be a good human being.
Be a good person. Be an upstanding person in society.
Don't be that guy.
Yes, exactly. But, like, it infuriates me because I know how hard I work to reach the levels I do with my running and stuff. There's no way I'm going to beat a guy. There's no way. And I know
That's
that.
why you get pissed when I go to
But-
the doctor. I smoke 7,000 packs a day. I don't do any exercise. You're like, your fucking tests are perfect. It just pisses me off. Just the way I roll, man.
That has nothing to do with what I'm talking about.
Sure it
But
does. We're
no.
biologically different.
We are, but as far as physicality, I guess is the word I want to use. If I set out today to run 2 miles and a fit person, not you, set out to run 2 miles and he was male, he's going to run faster than me because he's biologically made different. And that's just the way life is. But like everyone's like, oh no, girls are just as good as guys. Guys are, we all need to be on the same level playing field. No, we should not. And it makes me mad. Like, I'm mad for the girls that have worked their butts off to get to this point and they're getting beat.
They're getting beat bad.
Yeah.
What say you, Kelly? Does it make you as mad?
Oh, it makes me completely angry. Completely.
I mean,
Especially
basically, our
because
daughters have
I
no
have
chance.
girls, yeah. And that's what pisses me off. Our girls have absolutely no chance because now we have to compete a bit against these guys who think they're girls. And my thing is, these guys, like, you can be a guy who doesn't even want to transition, but now you're like, well, if I transition, I can take first place, so I'm going to do that. And there are people that will do that.
Is he transitioning? I thought he was just male competing in a female field. Like he identifies. He's transitioning.
transitioning.
Okay. Yeah. I didn't know that.
Because, so the big thing was that they were gauging it on how much testosterone he has in his system. So he's been taking some drug to take less of that or whatever. So he's been a year into that process, so he has less of that. So he's not technically a guy anymore. And I'm like, no, you are still biologically a guy.
For a while.
If you die today and 100 years later we dug up your bones, we would look at your pelvis and be like, oh no, that's a male.
You don't even have to look at their pelvic bone. You just have to look at their DNA.
Right,
Your DNA is male versus female.
Exactly.
My thing is just a prime example of stuff getting taken too far. So the feminist movement originally starts out with some very valid points. Women should be able to have their own checking accounts if they're, not married, et cetera, et cetera. But it escalates into the fact that now they're dominating women's sports because they're not good enough to participate in men's sports. And I'm not knocking women here. Women can do a ton of things better than men. But the feminist movement has pushed it to the point that now we can do this, now we can do that. They've actually undermined their own cause. They've cut themselves off at the knees. It's ridiculous.
So what I don't understand about the whole movement, and going back to what Nick said, there's actually 3 phases of the feminist movement. Phase 1 is just, can women have a checking account, credit card, etc. I don't think anybody's not on board with that. But the phase 3 is, in my opinion, punitive and wanting to punish the male species and eliminate it. And so I'm going to kind of go back here a little bit on my background in marketing and branding, where whenever we produce a product, we're looking for what differences we have to market it, to promote it, etc. It baffles me that you have an entire group of people that don't want to celebrate their differences, but basically eliminate it. Like I want to be the same here. I want to pretty much eliminate you or any differences we have, instead of saying, no, you and I are different and let's dive deeper into our differences instead of eliminating the differences.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's a mess, and the shit's got to stop eventually. I mean, because there is no sense in women playing sports anymore if we're going to do it this way. Why would your daughter work hard to try to...
I mean, we've all seen the meme. Let's say LeBron James decides tomorrow, and I'm not a LeBron fan, but let's say he decides tomorrow he's playing in the WNBA.
Right.
He's a girl. He averages 842 points a game.
Yeah.
Who's going to stop him?
Literally knocked out the entire women's NBA team.
Yeah.
Literally knocked it out.
You know,
Because
1 on 5, he's still winning.
He decided that he emotionally feels that way.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm like, no, you can't fight the DNA. You can't fight biologics. You can't fight it. So
Yeah, the whole feminist movement is pushed so far. Like anything, it's gone too far to the point that it actually undermines itself. It makes no sense.
So my biggest thing with the whole feminist movement is instead of embracing, like Kelly said, our differences, and like I have things that I'm really good at that you are not good at, and vice versa. What are you doing? Oh, okay. Anyhow, it's like, why are you petting my face? Anyhow, instead of embracing our differences, we are like, oh, no. I am just as good as he is. No, I am not as good as he is. There are things he can do that I cannot do as well. Can I do them? Yes. Will I do them as well as he does? No. And vice versa. There are things that I do 1,000,000 times better than he will ever do in his life. And instead of embracing that and being like, okay, here's my strengths, here's my weaknesses. What are you doing?
I'm just
agreeing with me.
I'm agreeing.
You should. No, you should agree with me.
Okay, whatever you say.
Anyhow, regardless.
All right, we beat this horse to death. People are going to get tired of hearing the feminist stuff. So what? Let's move on. We're going to do rapid fire. Let's go.
Okay.
You pick a topic. Pick a topic. What do you want to talk about?
I don't know. You caught me off guard.
Pick a topic.
Let's talk about Ukraine.
All right, let's go. What do you want to know?
You talk about it first.
What am my opinion don't matter. I've said it before. I'll say it again. I don't think the U.S. should be involved. We're not to police the world. Granted, we can't let Putin just walk across the whole world, so I really don't know what the answer is. That's literally as best as I can tell you right now.
So I saw a very interesting video today, and it was whenever Trump was president, and he first met with Putin or whatever, and they like reached out their hands to shake hands, and Trump grabbed his hand and pulled him into him. And it was a power move, 100%, because Trump was saying, no, I'm in charge here. And, like, I miss that leadership because we do not have the leadership. Because Trump let him know from the get-go with the handshake, no, I got you. I'm not going to let you do this. So
what say you?
That's my opinion.
I'm not looking necessarily as a military power to police the world. But at the end of the day, we are the number one. And I'd let everybody know that we're the biggest swing in this deal. If you don't like it, pack up your panties, son, because you're about to get blown off the fucking map. Take your pick. But we're making the rules here. You'll either play by them or you won't. We've got consequences for that. But it takes a firm leader to do that. Ronald Reagan is a prime example of how this shit
he wouldn't blink.
Handled.
He would tell you, and then he would act.
Because he walked softly, carried a big stick. He wasn't afraid to use the stick if he had to, but nobody wanted to push him to the point he had to use the stick.
Remember when Gaddafi fucked around with him back then? And he fucking sent a missile right through the tent and killed his whole family? That was the end of that.
If you'll recall, back in the Iran days, Jimmy Carter and the hostages, whatnot, what was Reagan elected? Like 13 minutes? And
literally.
Like, let him go, because this guy ain't screwing around. The second he gets off that podium, shit's going to start smoking over here because he's going to blow the shit out of us.
Yeah, and for you younger people that don't remember that, Nick's not exaggerating when he says 13 minutes. It was literally like 13 minutes.
Like 13
when he
minutes.
Was, like when he was sworn into office, basically took his hand off the Bible, like, let him go.
Yeah, let him go. Release him.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
What say you, Mrs. McCormick?
I don't feel very knowledgeable on the Ukraine subject. I
I'm the
agree
same way.
with you, Tony. Like, I don't feel like it's our responsibility to go over and police the situation, but I also understand that this is an opportunity to maybe retake our superpower authority that has really been diminished in the last 12 months.
Right.
And I believe that the third phase feminist movement's ruining the world.
She He was like, you wanted to cut off the feminist.
You
but
almost
we're gonna
Jen
bring that.
Psaki us there. You almost.
Circle back.
Circle back.
Not that I want to get back to the circle back to the feminist movement, but I'm like, you guys pushed so far. Your responsibility at one time was to raise kids and families, etc., and now you still have to do all that plus go to work.
Right.
Congratulations, you doubled your workload.
Right.
So
Exactly.
good work for that.
Exactly.
We actually have this conversation
all the time.
So Kelly and I have
Yeah.
a group text with all of our friends, and we have this conversation all the time. We were like, women fought so hard, and here we are doing triple the work, and we are exhausted. We are so tired of trying to, we need to have a full-time job, and we need to raise our kids perfectly, and we need to da-da-da-da, all these things. And I'm like, no, I want to be a 50s wife. I want to be, I want to stand in my house in high heels, and the only thing I have to do is do the dishes and make supper and clean the house.
And the shitty part about that is because that's the wife I want, but they have fucked the economy up so bad you can't do that anymore.
Exactly.
Right.
You know, when it takes $12,000 a fucking year just to pay for the health insurance, we can't do that anymore.
Right.
So it's mostly their fault, you know.
And I honestly think there's a lot more women that want to do that, but you're shamed into having a full-time career because you're like, well, these women fought for you for so long, and here you are just being a stay-at-home wife. No, being a stay-at-home wife,
Brand management.
there is nothing
Brand
wrong
management.
with that.
Here's
There's nothing wrong with
The
that.
stay-at-home mom has done a piss poor job with brand management.
Yeah.
It's got to the point it's like you're looked down upon, which is wrong, but that's where we're at, and we're to the point where we don't want strong men. We want to feminize the shit out of men. We want to make them into the no count pussies we want them to be, where they do nothing other than what they're told. But when hard times come and Vladimir Putin's pushing shit to the brink, then we want everybody to rise up and be these strong big men. Well, you backed them into a corner where they couldn't be men anymore. So make up your mind. Which way do you want it? Because you can't have it both ways.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. And
I do too.
Yeah.
As a female, I agree 1,000%.
So
Like,
my thing
we
is,
don't
you've
have-
talked enough. It's my turn to talk. You've been talking the whole fucking time. So my thing is, I think women should have the right to vote. I think women should have jobs. I think women should be as free if they so choose to do what men want to do. I really feel that way. I think it's a free country, and I think you're entitled to that. But we have made it such taboo and beat it down to the fact that, you know, if you're a stay-at-home mom, it's almost like you're a piece of shit that, well, nobody does that anymore.
Yeah.
When, to me, that's the most important moral fabric of your child's life.
Just look at TV. Just watch a TV show.
Exactly.
You watch a TV show, whether it's, you're not really Andy Griffith because there wasn't any women on that, but if you look at, Donna Reed, Leave It to Beaver, et cetera, whatever, we look at that image and we're like, oh, that's horrible. How bad for those women. Really? Really? I'm like, seemed like they didn't have it all that bad. Now they have to do all that same shit.
Right.
Only they had to do it in sweatpants to get all the other shit done.
Did you notice back when them women stayed home that you had respectful kids who were responsible and everything else?
Exactly.
Carolyn and I read a book in book club years ago, The Battle Hymn of the Tiger Mother. Yeah, and she talked about the fact that she's like, we don't let her, she had this list of things that she didn't let her kids do. And one of them was watching Disney TV or American TV, Nickelodeon or whatever. And she goes, her thing was, she said, TV nowadays portrays the kids as these witty, genius, you know, and the parents as doofuses. And there's no strong males. There's name one TV show today where the dad of the family is a strong male. They're not allowed to be.
It's a good thing Growing Corner to have a TV show because I would show them how that works.
That's your next YouTube channel.
Remember back when we were in grade school and our grade school principal, looking back, I can't say enough good about him.
Right.
I didn't always get along with everything he said, but he was this figurehead stood at the corner of the office.
And he was a big guy.
He was a big guy, and you did not question anything he said.
No.
You might squawk at a female teacher, not taking anything away from them, because I had great grade school teachers.
I did too.
All wonderful women for the most part. I had a few males, but generally females. They're all great women.
And even the males were pretty good.
The males were great. I have the utmost respect for all my grade school teachers. But when push come to shove, you didn't buck Tom.
No.
You knew damn well better than that was a bad decision.
Yep.
There was a paddle in his office. He wasn't afraid to use it.
Yep. And he never even had to go that far. He just had the look in his eyes and the firm grip on your shoulder.
He stood there like this, and if push was coming to shove, he'd grab you by the shoulder. Mr. Reed, come to my office, and he would set you down firmly in the chair and have a firm conversation with you, And that was the end of it.
Yep. Never had to use the paddle ever. And you were scared
I heard him
shitless.
use the paddle, but he never had to use it on me or you.
Right.
Or anybody in our class.
No.
So that ended a year or two in front of us.
Yep.
But it was still hanging on the wall.
Yep. And you didn't fuck with him.
You didn't screw with him. Nope. That's exactly right. But in today's world, that would be terrible.
Yep. Yeah. And that's just, so for those of you watching, my house is a dictatorship. My kids have no rights. I make the ultimate call. I don't care if they like it or not. It's my fucking house. I pay the bills. I'm the one running the show. I don't reason with my kids. I don't bargain. We don't do nothing. If I tell you to do this, you're going to fucking do it, and that's the end of it.
Yep.
I've never once abused my kids. I've never laid a finger on them. And we get along fine. But I don't, I just think it's bullshit when you try to be your kid's friend and we're going to reason with you. And shoot me straight. You can, God's on, you can tell the whole world right here. When my kids have went to your house, have they been awful?
They're perfectly fine.
The Reed kids are awesome.
They're
so
awesome.
well behaved,
Same-
respectful.
Henry's
Same
a
with-
weed-eating machine. You can
Same
send him
with-
back anytime.
But it's the same when your kids come to our house.
Well,
There
okay.
has never once ever been an issue, ever. And we all parent the same way.
Mm-hmm.
This is my house. I'm running the show. And that's how I grew up. I didn't question my dad. I mean, that was the last thing you did.
Yeah. I'll never forget the first time my mom said, wait till your dad gets home.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we'll see how this goes.
No.
Nah, you won't. You'll apologize a lot the next time to your mom before your dad gets home. My dad ruled like this: whatever I say is going to happen is happening. His foot will not fit in my ass, but it wasn't for lack of trying to get it in there.
Exactly.
My mom's a super great person. I questioned her a few times on some things. Didn't really work out very well long term. She was fair about it. I got no beatings that I didn't deserve. Deserved every one of them. What my dad said was law. What my mom said was law as well. He would back her on that.
Right.
She wasn't in control. She had some control in the backside of it. We never saw. They didn't argue in front of us.
Right.
You know,
That's how my parents
if there was a decision to be made,
I swear to
they
God,
made
my
it
parents and your
cumulative,
parents
and
to a
my
T.
dad come around to it. And when he came out,
Yep.
boy, you sure wish you hadn't have made that decision.
Yep.
Because it's going to be.
And Carol and I are the same way. We don't argue. Like if I get home and she tells me that the kid's, done whatever, and I know that she was clearly upset about it, I don't be like, well, it's not that big of a deal. We deal with it.
Yeah.
With the kids, and then her and I may talk later and be like, well, maybe next time it don't have to be that harsh of a punishment or whatever the case may be. Go ahead.
Am I allowed to turn? Anyhow, so
Feminist.
anyhow, so
Feminazi.
the big thing is when this came around was the whole self-esteem issue. So I'm trying to think now, back in the 70s where they were like, well, we need to build up kids' self-esteem, the whole anti-bullying thing. We need to make sure kids know they are enough.
I don't believe in the word bullying.
No,
Right.
I refuse it.
So, but that's where all of these issues have come from, because now we're preaching to our kids, well, no, you're enough the way you are. You're just fine. Everybody else is wrong. And
Okay, so-
you're perfect just the way you are.
So, this is where you and
it's
I-
a self-esteem thing, and as they build that up, it's actually breaking down the.
This is where you and I differ, because she's always Mrs. Positive. I'm Mr. Realist. I mean, seriously. I don't believe that you can go out and be anything you want to be in this world. That's bullshit. You can't be. Do you really think that a fucking quadriplegic can go out and beat Usain Bolt in a fucking race? Do you really believe that? I don't. Therefore, you cannot be anything you want to be in this world. You can't. You got to have boundaries set that you can be anything you want to be to a certain extent.
This goes back to my earlier statements, Tony. Between my dad and Clint Eastwood, they both told me a man's got to know his limitations.
Exactly.
And that's fact. That's
Exactly.
fact. There are things you're going to be good at, and there's things you're going to suck at, and you can work hard at things you suck at and get better.
Right.
But you're probably not going to be the best at, and that's fine. But there's
Yeah.
things you're going to be the best at, and you got to focus on those.
I agree 100%. I'm not knocking people that are in wheelchairs or whatever. I'm just being realistic. I get tired of people beating that into kids' heads that you can be anything you want to be, because sometimes you can't. Take for instance, farming.
Yeah.
That's a very, very hard field to get into. You can't just say, I'm going to go to school for 9 years and become a farmer. There's way more to it than that.
Yeah.
And the stars have to align, right? If your family didn't farm, to make that happen, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it happened for me. I was very, very
I'm
fortunate.
not going to be Warren Buffett.
Exactly.
And that's fine.
Exactly. So I just don't buy this. And honestly, do you honestly think a 400-pound kid in the 8th grade is going to be the state pole vault champion? I'm just being real. Do you really think it's going to happen? No.
Take a hell of a pull. If he watches Revenge of the Nerds and gets Lamar's deal, he might
on the javelin. On the javelin. But I'm just being realistic. I think when you tell people that they can be anything that they want to be, I think it's false hope, and you damage
Okay,
them.
so I think that there's a line to cross there, a very thin line. So I agree with you. You can't be anything you want to be. You have to know your own limitations. But I also think that you need to teach your children to push those limitations, so they aren't just like, well, I'm never going to be a very fast runner, so I'm just going to give up right now. You have to teach them, yes, you can do more, and you have to push those limits. No, you're not going to be a Usain Bolt, but you can do great things as well.
Right. I have no issue with pushing kids, but to just flat out, because to me that's a bald-faced lie. When you tell a kid that they can be anything that they want to be, I think that's a lie. I truly believe that. I don't think. Do you think that my son right now could be the president of Russia?
Well, he ain't Russian, so that's going to be tough.
So does that not eliminate the fact that he could be anything he wanted to be?
Well, yeah, you're exactly right. I go through the same battle with my son on a nightly basis. We play basketball. We got a Nerf hoop. We play basketball pretty much morning and night. And it frustrates when I beat him. Been playing basketball for a long time, and I'm way taller than he is. It's a Nerf hoop. The hoop hits me about here.
Yep.
Maybe here. I can beat him 10-0 if I really want to. I don't.
Right.
I don't let him win. Sometimes he's on a hot streak. I don't block every shot he can take, but it burns him when I beat him. I'm like, it's part of life, bud.
Yep.
I've been playing longer than you. I'm taller than you. I'm better at it than you.
Let me ask all you guys this then. If your kids can truly be anything they want to be, anything, can your son be a woman?
No. He was born a male.
Exactly. So does that not eliminate it right there? To me, it does.
Yeah.
You cannot be anything you want to be.
Nobody at this table is disagreeing with you.
I'm just saying.
We're all on the same page.
I just think it's wrong to beat it in kids' heads that they can be anything.
Right now, Kelly's thinking, boy, I wish I had signed up for this podcast.
No, not at all. Because I have definite opinions on it as well. I mean, I agree. Yeah.
Would you care to elaborate on that?
She's like, no.
I think that as parents, I don't think we ever say you can be. Nick and I don't think either of us have ever said to our kids,
and
you
we
can be anything
don't. But
that you can want to
as
be.
a society, they teach that. You know,
I think what we try to say is, well, first of all, like our goal for them is to be a Christian. You know, number one, top priority, no matter what, a Christian. And then number two, I think, you know, like I personally, years ago, I read a study where they're like, if you tell kids, you know, how smart they are, they rely on their intelligence. But if you tell them how hard of a worker they are, they learn to rely on their hard work. And so that's what we try to promote is work hard. And, you know, Max will get frustrated at basketball or whatever when he's playing with Nick or even just on his team or whatever. And we don't ever coddle that. I'm like, I'm sorry you're disappointed that, you know, you didn't get as much playing time. Work harder. Mm-hmm. Like you have two parents that will practice with you. Work harder. Right. That is the difference, you know?
You know, but it is very interesting on how, you know, my kids genetically came from Kelly and I, but, you know, both of them came from Kelly, and they have very drastically different views on how to accomplish a goal.
Yeah.
Drastically different. And we've parented them basically the same, but very different avenues of approaches. I won't elaborate on it because I don't want to call either one of them out on it, but it's interesting to see how they both go about it. And then so that prompts me to look back on how my brother and I approached similar subjects or whatever. And Tony's met my brother. You've known him your whole life, basically. And he's all go. Got to run through a wall? All right.
Yep, he'll do it.
Run through the wall. I'm going to take a little bit more PC approach, but still run through the wall. one of my kids has more of the run through the wall approach. The other one has a little bit less of run through the wall approach. It's hard to bring them around to the run through wall approach. It's hard to teach that. I don't know why it's that way, but it is. You know, and Kelly and I are both run through the wall people for the most part. I say, I'm going to take a more PC avenue than my brother on it. And Kelly's probably the most run through the wall person in her family. But it's just interesting to see the differences in how your offspring approach that topic. Like I said, you know, whether you play or not, it's not all sports. It can be math homework or whatever. You want to get better at anything in life? Practice it. Do it.
Yeah,
you want to be the best ditch digger in the world? Grab a shovel. You want to be the best mathematician? Do math in your free time. You want to be the fastest reader in your class? Read a book. You know?
Yeah.
You can Google it and be like, I do a YouTube video on it. No, once you actually do it. But most people don't take that approach anymore.
I don't think we read that book in book club, Malcolm Gladwell's Outlier, where he talks about the 10,000 hour rule, where you become an expert at something after you've done something 10,000 hours, you know, and not that, you know, there's a natural talent that comes with someone with Usain Bolt or whatever, but also the more, you know, and I've told the kids the story, like Max will get frustrated about something with basketball or whatever. And so I've shared with him the story about Michael Phelps, who after he didn't do well, I don't know which Olympics it was, for 4 years straight, he did not take one single day off. He practiced on Sundays and holidays. And he was like, over the course of 4 years, those hours he's like, at our level, we're all talented or whatever. He goes, it comes down to practicing and perfecting. And he's like, by not taking one single day off, I had 200 and some hours, you know, above my competition. And so then he comes to the next Olympics and, you know, and so I'm like, It comes down to the hours you spend perfecting that craft, whatever it is you want to be good at. You know, and I think one of our kids understands that, and the other is like, why am I not naturally talented in this area, that I'm not God's gift or whatever? And I'm like, no, it's about the hours spent doing whatever it is you love.
So I know you and I have talked about the book Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins.
Mm-hmm.
And
I love that book.
Like, he talks about that a lot, where he's like, there are people who just want to live a mediocre life, and then there are people who are willing to go the distance. And going the distance is never easy. It's never fun. You are going to wake up and be like, I do not want to do this. But you do it anyways because you want to be superior. Mm-hmm. You want to push yourself or do whatever. And there are just certain people who are totally fine with walking this path in life, and then there's other people who are like, no, I want to push my boundaries. I want to go the distance. And you know,
Nick and I talked about that on a couple podcasts ago. You know, the average American sees, just using Garth Brooks for example, that, you know, oh, he's worth so much money and look at his life of luxury. But if the average American followed him around for 12 hours, they would collapse.
Yeah.
They don't realize how hard
he had to work.
them people work. Mm-hmm. You know, all they see is the CMA awards, and you know, and he gets to go out on stage and run around like a crazy man and sing a song, and that's easy money. But they didn't see the millions of hours that them guys put in behind the scenes to make that happen. And
you know, I hate to keep taking it back to basketball, but look at Michael and Kobe. Mm-hmm. Arguably, and Larry Bird, arguably the three hardest working players in my generation of watching sports or basketball. You know, Kobe shot 1,500 shots a day. You watch his interviews. I just watched one today. Guy goes on the court, Kobe's already playing. Practices at the other end of the court. Guy gets done with his workout. He watches for a half hour. Kobe's still playing. After the game, Kobe beats him. He's like, hey, man, what are you still doing out there? He's like, I just want to let you know that no matter how hard you work, I'm going to outwork you. You're never going to outwork me. You can't do it. I will play 24 hours a day if that's what it takes to beat you. But that work ethic anymore is very hard to instill and very looked down upon. Cripes, we can't find anybody to work 5 hours at a McDonald's anymore.
So I know he's a little liberal, but like The Rock Dwayne Johnson. He was like, I'm the hardest worker out there. I will be at the gym before you are, and I will stay at the gym later than you are every single day because I want to be the hardest worker in the room. And that's why he has the success he has.
Just like if you watch The Dance, Michael Jordan's documentary, that was his biggest thing in there. I mean,
I'll never ask you to do something I won't do,
exactly.
but I will outwork you every time.
Exactly. And I mean, that guy, he pushed his whole team
to be better.
Exactly.
Which is what made him the GOAT.
Yeah, exactly.
And Kobe was the same way. Like, I will do the things you won't do every day, all day, and you'll never catch me because you're not willing to do them.
Right.
And not being that person is just fine. But just don't sit around and bitch about the fact that you're not that person.
Right, exactly.
Do I get beaten a lot of things in life, tractor pulling, whatever it is? I do. But I'm not sitting around bitching about it.
Right. And the thing is, whether it's Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, whoever, he's worth $100 million. Well, if it was that easy, we would all be worth $100 million.
Yeah.
We don't see the work that went in from the time they were little kids, everything that they missed in life because they were playing basketball, doing it. Just like you say, Kobe Bryant shooting 1,500 shots a day. That sounds like easy. Well, I'd rather do that than go to work. Okay, well, pick up a basketball some Saturday when you're not at work and go shoot 1,500 shots and see how hard that is. That's not an easy task.
That's not an easy task. And do that every Saturday.
Yeah.
Plus Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Yeah.
Until you make 75% of them. Yeah. And then call an NBA team and they'll hire you.
So like I say, we would all be worth that money if it was that easy. We would just sign up and go play for the Lakers, but it don't work that way.
It don't work that way.
Right. So I don't even know what I'm going to say. Anyhow, but if you think about it, though, people always say, you have all these people that are the hardest workers in the room or whatever. But in our day and age, our life has been made so comfortable. Like, we know we can get to this point by just doing the bare minimum. So we're going to do the bare minimum to do that versus these other people who have the mindset, I'm all in. I'm going all in on this. And there's so few people that do that anymore because our lives are so comfortable right now with technology and everything.
Could you imagine if I would have told my grandpa in 1983 that you're going to have guys who literally stop their tractor on the end of the field and set the rest of the afternoon because it wouldn't drive itself?
Right.
Yeah.
Even though they could just grab the steering wheel and keep going, they refuse to do that. They won't even sit there with their hand on the steering wheel and drive.
Yeah.
I think they just need a sound guard body cam.
Oh, I do too.
And some cassette tapes. A couple of Reba.
Yeah.
Vision guard.
Yep. Vision guard cab.
Yeah. Roxette. That was another big one when I love Roxette.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. Like, we've got it so easy now. Like, I don't want to downplay the people that have a bad plight in life. But generally speaking, people can listen to a podcast or not in this category. We have it easy enough here now, for the most part, in general, that we can't even necessarily fathom what the other half is doing.
Right.
If you talk to your dad long enough, your dad, her dad, whoever, and you talk about when they were 17, 15, 13, their worst day, it's pretty bad. Their best day, probably not as bad as our best day.
Yep.
Or as our worst day. Like, their best day is not as bad as our worst day, in general. Right. It's all relative, but as a society in general, like, we've escalated in some ways, and we've got it easier.
And to take that a step farther, that's why I've always said this country is in the shape that it's in. Nobody's, and I'm not advocating for civil war, whatever you want to say. I'm just saying that's why nobody has ever fixed this country. We're too comfortable.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's too easy.
I mean, seriously. When you're in a third world country and it gets bad, it's like, at this point, I have nothing to lose.
Yeah.
And you're going to do whatever it takes.
We all have something.
But here, it's just like, goddamn, they raised my taxes again, but, if I can pay it.
I'm going to stay here.
Yeah, and so it's never going to change. I've always said this country is like an alcoholic. It will never change until you hit rock bottom where you're laying in the gutter on your deathbed and people are like, we got to stop. This is out of control. And we are far from that. I mean, way far from that.
We're comfort addicts.
Exactly.
We're comfort addicts.
Exactly.
Nowadays.
Yep. I mean, all it would take is for the federal government to just shut off cell phones. Nothing else. You can have your AC, you can have your cards, you can have your electricity, everything. We're just going to shut cell phones off. Then I think it would be a revolution in the streets. I mean, we've become so addicted to certain comforts that we won't go without them. We'll forego all the others just to keep the one.
Well, I just look back, I'm 42. Everybody in here is 40-ish. Nobody likes you, Carolyn.
Some a little older, some a little younger.
Hello.
But you go back to when our parents were that age. Okay, so everything was proportionally way cheaper. But it was still way rougher.
Right.
We're way ahead on the scale of housing.
Right. A new car cost you $3,000, but you only made $2 an hour.
Yeah. Everything is proportionally.
We're better off today than we were then.
Yeah. In theory. In theory.
Because me and Dad were actually talking about this here a while back. In like 1987-ish, roughly, my Uncle Joe, would have been my great uncle, been my dad's Uncle Joe. And I don't remember how old he was in 1987. I'm going to say he was 72, 73. And Dad said, I never really thought about this till years after the fact, but Uncle Joe never had air conditioning his whole life. Never grew up with it. And in the 80s, some people had it, some people didn't. It wasn't like today where everybody's got it. And I think by then, they were retired and old enough in life. They didn't have it because they'd never had it before, so they didn't know what they were missing. And so he's like, it's kind of weird to think about that in 1987 when he died, never knew air conditioning. All
right, so here's a fun fact. Whenever I moved out when I was 20 years old, we never had air conditioning at my mom and dad's house. So when I was 20 years old living on my own, it was the very first time I'd ever had air conditioning, ever. And it was a huge luxury. Like, I was ecstatic about it. And like now, fast forward
10 minutes later,
15 years, and we're like, we can't survive without it. We will die if we don't have air conditioning, And it makes you realize the comforts that we were absolutely so used to in this life,
Well, Nick's mom and I will have this conversation sometimes. She'll try to tell me some story from her childhood and growing up in an old farmhouse or whatever. And I will say to her, I'm like, Arlene, you were born in the 50s. I was born in the 80s, and we had the exact same childhood. I grew up in an old farmhouse. There wasn't a furnace. We had a wood stove. My entire childhood, I'd get home from basketball practice at 5. We'd have to go out with Dad to help with the cattle and the horse chores. And then Dad would go inside, and then Karen and I and Kim would stay outside, and we had to bring enough wood from the wood pile to the porch.
Yep, same here. We had a wood stove.
Mom and Dad
No
to
furnace.
heat the stove, heat the house the next day. So upstairs, we would wake up in the morning, and you'd see your breath because there was no heat up there. There was just a couple of those big registers for the heat to rise, And if the wind blew right on a snowy day, we'd wake up with snow in our bedroom because the windows were such crap, And, it was a great childhood, though. It was a great childhood. And Nick and I have had that conversation that our kids, like, how do we...
We'll never know the plight.
They'll never know that.
I
The
hope
work
they
that
never
you
know.
had to do. We'd go in then after hauling wood to the porch, eat supper, and then you had homework and baths. There was no shower. There was just a bath.
At the time when I was a kid, so I was born in 1980. I was the youngest of 3, so we was all born 76, 78, and 80, all 2 years apart. We were not allowed video games. We didn't have 4-wheelers. We didn't have none of that shit. And at the time, it was like our parents are communists. I can't believe all my friends got Nintendos, got 4-wheelers. We weren't allowed none of that. But we were forced to go outside and use our imaginations.
And we played outside all
And that's what we
day
did.
long.
We literally got 3
all
channels.
All day long.
And I'm honest to God, I'm not one of these people that, oh my God, look how bad I had it as a kid and walked to school uphill both ways. I'm not. I'm truly not. But that was literally how it was. We literally had 3 channels, no video games.
Yep.
Dad got to watch the TV, whatever he was watching was what you watched by default.
One of our 5 channels.
Exactly.
Yep.
But looking back now, at the time it sucked. Looking back now, I don't regret it at all.
No,
My biggest thing is, like, I struggle because that's exactly how I grew up. Like, antenna, no air conditioning, all those things. Like, I want to parent my children that same way.
Yeah.
But I also want to make sure they're prepared for the world they're living in.
Right.
Because our world is nothing but computers and devices. And
I
stuff like that.
agree. Our
And
kids need to.
I
have
want to make sure
access.
they understand that, but I also want to make sure they appreciate the things like I appreciated them, you know?
We live on 36 acres, and our kids have not left the driveway for the 6 years that we've lived here.
Well,
Very seldom.
Very, very occasionally.
Very, very seldom.
Yeah.
I'm like, if you would have dropped me in this place at their
Mm-hmm.
age, you would have not seen me from about 9 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
I'd
And it's
have
not
come
like
in for
we're
you.
helicopter parents. Like, I
No.
flat out told the kids, I'm like, be back by lunchtime. And I'm like, you guys have watches, whatever.
Granted, our kids will play outside, but they don't play the way we did.
Right.
They'll go out in the yard and they'll play ball or do whatever and be outside most of the day, but we would have been gone in the pasture. You wouldn't have seen us. We'd have been building forts and living like Indians.
Yeah.
We did, and that's
You know,
exactly
we did.
That's exactly what we did when we were kids. Like, we'd haul blankets out. We'd get the tractor with the wagon. We'd load it all up with
We did
stuff.
too.
We'd disappear in the pasture. My mom would literally lock the doors and leave us like bread and bologna and be like,
Yeah.
feed yourselves.
We would go to the water hydrant and turn it on and drink water. You didn't go inside for a drink. Hell
Heck no, because
They
your
might
mom,
make you stay inside.
you were.
then you'd have to clean. You did not want your parents to see you because they were
No.
going to give you chores. And so you were like, did she see me? Did she not? Did you see me?
I think it's just a different mentality. So if you would have dropped Nick and I at the Louisville Farm Show at 13 and 9 years old, we would have not left there till we sat in every tractor and combine in that place. We would have been there till 9 o'clock that night. Within an hour and a half, our son was fairly bored. He would have went either way. He would have stayed if everybody would have said stay. If you'd have said let's go swimming, we're going swimming. But that's just how we rolled back then. Where nowadays it's like they look at it real quick and then it's like, okay, we're done with it. We're ready to move on, you know. But we would have never
The attention span.
Yeah,
Everything's
I guarantee
boom, 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 boom.
And Nick will back me. He's just walking through the door now getting beer. But wouldn't you agree, Nick, at the farm show, if you would have dropped us in there at 13 and 9 years old, you and I would have not left until we sat on every tractor and every combine that was there. And our sons, they enjoyed it. There was no issue, but they got bored with it pretty quick.
I
I
think Nick and I would both admit that probably one of our biggest regrets was not having more kids. Colby's very good about entertaining herself. She's a barn rat. She will go out to the barn and spend 9 hours organizing it on a Saturday.
Yep.
Max, though, on the other hand, Max needs about 3 brothers. Because if there's other boys there, we live on 7 acres surrounded by 30 acres of woods. And he's like, let's go to the stream. Let's do this.
We'll
Let's
never
do
see
that.
him if there's another boy there.
If there's another boy there, we don't see him. But otherwise, he's just in the house wandering around.
Right. And Henry's the exact same way. Like, if he has friends to play with, he's like, see you, Mom, and he disappears off in the pasture. And that is probably one of my biggest regrets, as I always tell Tony. I was like, I wish we had one more son.
Yes,
because
us too.
Henry would have had somebody to go explore and do that kind of stuff with.
I was fortunate in that regard. I had my brother to teach me the good and the bad. But it goes hand in hand. And, you know, back to the parenting thing and the times being harder and whatnot. Like, I remember growing up, and you don't necessarily appreciate it till it's too late. But like my dad grew up hard. Like, his childhood wasn't rosy and sweet. His idea of a weekend when I was growing up was to do work, but just less work than he would do on a Monday or a Friday. Like, his Saturdays and Sundays were still work, but it's a little bit less work than previous days. You know, we'd wax a truck. I mean, elbow grease. You know, had to put it in all the time. We'd take bug and tar remover off the chrome bumpers of every freaking vehicle we had every weekend. You don't really appreciate that at the time. You hate it, but later on, you're like, you know what? That wasn't all bad. Like, that was a fine plan on his part. Kind of wish I did that more. Of course, now all the bumpers are painted, and you don't do it as much. But
so my dad was an over-the-road truck driver or whatever, and he would be gone for weeks on end, and then he would come home for 2 or 3 days. And our weekend would be, when he got home, we would grease all the wheels, we'd clean the semi out, we'd vacuum everything out. we do everything, and like that was super fun. That was a big
fun.
deal.
It was normal.
Yeah, and it was like exciting when Dad came home finally.
Yeah.
You know, you're like, oh, we get to grease all the tires. We get to do this, and this.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I know what you're saying there. Now that'd be child abuse.
I know.
You know, unfortunately.
It's just a different lifestyle, and that's one of the things like I struggle with a lot because I want my kids to grow up not poor, but I want them to grow up appreciating the things like I appreciated it because I grew up poor. Like we didn't have all the things like everybody else did, but I appreciate so much of that more, and I want my kids to appreciate that.
But I've always said too, though, and me and Nick always talk about this because I still swear we had the same parents. My parents were not helicopter parents.
No.
My mom and dad laid down. It didn't matter where you went, if it was in town, to a get-together, to a friend's house, whatever. Yeah. You had ground rules that were laid down. They were just a given, but they got
general set of rules.
And they got reiterated in the car ride on the way there. And then, I don't want to see you the rest of the night.
Yeah. You show up, we're leaving.
Yeah. And so we didn't. We done everything we could to stay out of our parents' sight.
Yeah.
And nowadays, kids are very clingy.
If we're on a 2-acre property back in the day, we're in the farthest corner from wherever the adults were.
And if somebody got hurt,
you got close. You never said if somebody got hurt.
No,
they had to be bleeding out their eyes.
Right. You never told an adult because that meant we all had to go home.
That was the end of all of it. Yeah. We were as far away as we could be.
But she probably, and she don't helicopter parent, but she's a little more watchful.
Yes, I am.
I guess you would say.
I'm way more concerned than you are.
Where I'm just like, let them go. You know, they're going to be fine. I mean, what? You know, she acts like if they walk 20 feet from the house, somebody's going to kidnap them. I'm like, they're going to be fine.
I watch a lot of.
We're in the middle of nowhere.
That's exactly the thing. We're in the middle of nowhere.
We
they could
had
walk
to buy
outside.
a 2-story house so the kids could finally have their windows open.
Yeah, I can't have windows open on the first floor at night. Like Nick's like, Kelly, and I'm like, for real. I
just watched a documentary about leaving your windows open. Don't do it.
Like,
Don't do it.
Do you know how many kids are kidnapped by somebody cutting out the screens?
But I will say, like, and not to negate my neurosis or whatever, but I think that there's so much information readily available.
That's true.
Like we read all of that, and so we are super paranoid about it.
It's so much different mindset. When Tony and I were kids, invariably every summer the same thing would happen. There's a red van, there's a white van, there's a blue van with no windows, and they're kidnapping kids. And what did we do every time? We got on our bikes, we grabbed those little mini bats that they give you at a Cardinals game, and we loaded up. We're like, we're going to find those sons of bitches.
Like we were in
our town. This will be the last town they rob a kid in America. Yeah. We're going to whip their ass.
Right. We're 8 years old.
I'm not even making that up. That was literally every time you heard that rumor, your parents would be like, hey, keep an eye out for this band. It's like, oh, yeah, we're looking for them. As soon as we find them, you'll be reading about them in a newspaper tomorrow. We'll get
Could you imagine now if you put that on Facebook, there's a red van potentially kidnapping kids?
Oh, my goodness.
There is no kid going outside in town.
For years. Yeah, for years.
My favorite part of that is the parents are telling them about this van and to stay away from it. And they're like, we have been looking for it. We are hunting it down.
The better part is, though, is the parents. They're like, hey, you know, if you guys ride 8 blocks up to the park, just keep an eye out for this van. You know, they're probably going to confront you, but you just walk the other way.
You might get kidnapped, so just keep an eye out for that.
We had a whole plan. It's like, well, we're going to hide some people over here. We're going to lure them over there. As soon as we get them around this corner, like we're just beating the shit out of these guys in this van. We've heard the tale. They're in this. There's 2 people in a van. Yeah. There's 8 of us. We could totally take them with our Cardinals. Yeah. Little mini.
We're 8 years old.
We're taking them down. Yeah.
You know, I mean,
crank up the 2 Live crew. We're going to get them.
Yeah. So a friend of ours has talked before about her aunt had like 7 or 8 kids, and she used to during the summer send the kids outside with a sleeve of saltine crackers, a gallon of iced tea, and a roll of toilet paper, and then lock the door. And I'm like, I think I might take that. I'm going to adopt that policy this summer and be like, do not come in.
Honestly, in Tony and I's childhood, that wouldn't have affected us at all. We wouldn't have been close enough back to the house to get the tea.
We're like, hey, fucking hey, we didn't have to go home for dinner now.
Yeah, we're golden. We're golden.
My dad went to build a grain bin one year, and I don't know, all these cinder blocks were developed. I cannot even tell you how many hours my sisters and I spent rearranging those cinder blocks into a house. And we played that for a while. And then we played a restaurant for a while. And then a flower shop. I mean, those cinder blocks was the endless imagination of 5 girls. I mean, we spent months playing with them.
I honestly think that's why, and I don't mean this if my kids listen to this on down the road. I don't mean this in any way like this, but my kids are not problem solvers. Like, Nick and I, literally, at 8 years old, it's like, well, my bike's screwed up. If I tell Dad, then he's just going to get pissed and blow up at me, so we got to fix this bike.
My dad's got to cut up and throw it in junk.
Exactly. So we got to get this fucking thing fixed so we can ride bikes. Where my kids are like, tires flat, I'm just going to go inside and watch TV now. I'm done.
Yeah.
And it's like you can't put air
But
in a
I think
tire.
that's part of the disposable society we live in, where it's like, oh, we can buy anything brand new like that. Amazon Prime, whatever, and they pick up on that. I mean, how many times have you been like, oh, I need a new this, ordered it 2 days later, it's there. They see that disposability.
I disagree. I think it's the fact that they don't have to use their imaginations.
Yeah.
Partially, but I also think they see the disposableness of society.
It could be.
My kids think the greatest thing ever is that stream just down from you guys' house. So this summer, we're just going to take turns giving them toilet paper, sleeves of crackers, and
I'm in.
a gallon of water.
I'll even give Ritz instead of saltines.
Go.
I'll even buy Ritz instead of saltines.
When I was a kid, I remember we spent one whole summer. Somebody had told us you could make bombs out of corn cobs, black tape, and gasoline. I cannot tell you the number of corn cobs that we pilfered back from the farm, threw in a bucket of gasoline, wrapped them in electrical tape, and tried to. They do not explode. But we spent a lot of time doing it. Or a lighter and spray paint. Make it which is a terrible idea. Kids, don't do it at home. It will blow up in your hand.
Right.
But I spent 2 summers doing both of those items. Never accomplished my goal. But it was still super fun. Between that and forest, like I think about back in the day, my dad would be like, okay, you're going out to Chenklanks Woods. All right. Took off in the 4-wheeler that morning. Come back right before the streetlights got on. Had it timed down good. And that was all good. I won't hardly let my kids drive right to the end of the driveway and back. But back in the day, it's like, here's the keys. See you later.
And if your parents were as good as mine, no helmets, no nothing. Just take off.
Well,
no big deal.
My dad was a pretty big helmet guy after my brother knocked himself unconscious and ended up in the ER for a while. But before that, he mentioned it a lot. We didn't always act on it. I'm more of a rule follower than my brother, which is why he got knocked unconscious. After that, helmets were mandatory. But
So I have to throw in this story. So whenever I grew up, we had a huge yard, and we'd push mow the entire yard because that's what we did. And then we'd have to hand rake the entire yard. And I will never forget, all of us girls, I had 4 sisters, we would rake all of the grass into lines and make a house out of it. And so my mom would look out the window, and we had raked all of our piles of grass into lines, and we had a bedroom and a kitchen, and we drag all these things. And I'm like, my kids do not have that imagination. No. Like they're missing out. Like I need to tell my kids to go rake the yard so they can figure that out.
Yeah.
Right. But that's why when I tell the kids to go play in the pasture.
I do.
Right. And they walk to the edge of the fence and like, now we're bored. I'm like, well, tough shit. This electric fence, get on the other side of it and don't come back till 4 o'clock.
We had this great old barn at our place growing up. It was one of those, it was built into a hill. And so the area that was built into the hill is where, there were the stalls for the horses. And then there was 2 concrete ramps that went up to the floor, at the main level. And that's where the granary was. And that was so you could pull a horse-drawn wagon up, unload the grain, and then it would come down the other side. And then, of course, the haymow up top. And the irrigation just south of our house, the gun on the end would spray the pasture around that barn. So my sisters and I would put on our swimsuits, and we would go stand on that ramp. And that was, that was our swimming pool of sorts, just getting hit by the irrigation, back in the day.
Come around once a day.
Yeah,
See you back here tomorrow.
We've got 20 minutes here to have a grand old time. So anyway, we decided to be super smart one time and take Tupperware glasses out there and let the irrigation fill those cups up to drink out of when we got hot. So we forget to bring them in. And then that night, Mom's like, I'm missing a whole bunch of glasses. And so then we're like, oh, and we tell him. And then my dad's like, oh, girls. He goes, don't drink the irrigation water. We apply chemicals.
That explains a lot of what's wrong with you.
So we actually there was a old grain bin in our backyard, but it had fallen apart or whatever. So it was like, I don't even know how to say it. It was like the shadow of it or whatever you want to say. And that was our playhouse.
Yeah.
And we drug all of our stuff out there every single day. We load up the tractor and wagon. We fill it with plates, dishes, whatever. And we would spend the entire day out there just playing house.
We had that same lawnmower with wagon.
Yes,
and we would
this
put
discussion.
Our sleeping bag in the back. And then all 5 of us girls, there was one driver. And then the other 4 of us would get in this wagon with the sleeping bag. And I had a ghetto blaster that I had bought.
Not a boombox, not a radio, a ghetto blaster.
And ghetto blast Amy Grant.
I'm going to tell you right now. The closest ghetto. But,
I had bought with my bean walking money. Thank you very much. And we would play the Monkees cassette tape in that and drive around our whole farm up and down the hills and singing Daydream Believer at the top of our lungs for hours.
I figured it would be Amy Grant. I really did. I just whispered that to Tony.
We just
I was
had
like,
her
Amy
record.
Grant.
We only had her records, not her cassettes.
So, we had a huge pasture area behind our house. And so we would do the same thing. It'd be like 5 o'clock in the morning. Mom would load all of us up. We'd head out to the pasture and pick blackberries all day. And that was our big event. That was our Saturday morning.
You've also got to admit, parents, and I'm as guilty as this as anybody, they don't trust their kids as much. I can remember Dad telling me stories when he was 8, 9 years old. It's like nothing. The kid just gets on the corn planter, and they basically him and his brothers done all the farming when they were 10 years old because Grandpa was working off the farm. Which nowadays the machinery's different and it's a lot more of a business. Back then it was still a business, but
just labor.
It was also a lifestyle.
You got a lot more money on the line nowadays.
Yeah.
But could you imagine if you just told your 9 and 10-year-old kids, hey, you guys, and that's just lowball it. You guys got 300 acres of corn to plant this year. Go get it planted. I mean, would you do that as a parent?
No.
No, but that's how it was at my place. Dad worked in town. He had the shop to run. And Heath and I have done the farming as long as I can remember. I mean, Dad was involved in it. I'm not taking anything away from my dad. And not he didn't check in with us or whatnot. But I'm like, Dad or my brother has planted corn. I can remember my dad planting corn, but it was late 80s, early 90s. No-till drills come out. I started planting the beans. Dad hasn't planted in 30 years.
Yeah.
Maybe 40. It'd be 30 to 40 years for the most part. I remember, he was getting dropped off here, there, wherever, just run this tractor, work the ground or whatever.
Drive him down the road.
When you get done, stop. We'll come get you, or whatever, tell you about it. My brother, I usually disc and he would field cultivate. So I wait till he got done and then we would drive back to the farm together. And I was 9. I mean, I was large for my age, so that helped in some regard, I guess.
But still on a 1256 or wasn't like he's on an H or an AM.
It was a 1256. Yeah.
So, it's just the mentality of parents have changed because I'll admit, I get my wife shit about, whether it be helicopter parenting or whatever. I think about the thousands of miles I rode in the back of a pickup truck.
Absolutely.
At 4 or 5 years old with Mom and Dad driving, didn't think nothing about it.
I'll never
Down
forget
the highway at 60 miles an hour.
Riding in the back of the truck, my brother and I, we're cruising along the back of a truck, and there's a snake on the road. Out of nowhere, we don't know there's a snake on the road. We're just riding the back of the truck shooting the breeze. My dad slams on the brakes, slides on the snake, backs up, runs over 15 times, back and forth, back and forth. We're beating off the glass, beating off the tailgate. He never once was any concern for our safety. It was all about killing that damn snake that was on the road.
Yes.
Pull out on the highway. He's got me driving the truck behind him. I'll never forget this. It was an 84 Ford diesel. Pull on the road, and I'm going to be a smart ass, so I got it in first. And I cackle it off a little bit and shift to second. I should have just taken off in second because first wasn't fast. I go to shift to second, and the gear shift just disappears. It's not hooked to anything. So I'm honking the horn, flashing the lights. And it's right as we pull on the highway. He comes back, gets it clicked into second. Something had happened. Some clip had fell out, whatever it was. Drive it down the farm. But I'm like 9.
Right.
I'm like,
on the highway.
On the highway, mind you. You know, not a big deal. That's just the way it was. I'm like, crap, what if I get pulled over by a cop? But, you know, my dad's a mountain of a man back then. I'm like, cop pulls up to us. Dad's going to tell him to fuck off. And he's going to tell him, hey, I told my son to drive that truck, get your ass back in your car. That's just how it was.
Well,
you know?
I know my wife is too young, and your wife didn't grow up around here. I will vouch for this to the day I die, and anybody that's my age or older will. It was common practice at 9 years old to meet Nick on the highway in an 84 Ford diesel pickup truck.
It was. I mean,
right down the middle of the highway.
Yeah. It's just, when it comes, you got close to the farm, you took the middle of the road, you blocked traffic, pulled in.
Yep. It was like the I'm not going to say the talk of the community, but back then it was just standard knowledge. If you met Nick at 9 years old on the highway,
wasn't a big deal.
No big deal. You wave and go on.
Yeah.
So would you do that with Max now?
No, he's 10. I wouldn't do that with him now. No. You know,
and you're old man.
The highway's way busier, but still.
But that was standard operating procedure with your dad.
I'll never forget back in the day. My brother was actually driving. I was in the passenger seat, which was fairly rare. Usually, he was in a tractor. Dad was in a tractor. And I was in the truck at that time. And the driveway at the farm was super narrow.
Yes, it was.
So you always had to swing out to get your tractor in there or whatever. And Dad had a hard and fast rule on that. Like, people try to pass you on the right, you got to be mindful of that. Like, you got to take care of that. So in true my brother fashion, car tries to pass us on the right. He yanks the wheel, pulls to the right. They dive off in the ditch. We make the turn. We pull in there. Dad pulls the tractor in the shed. We hop out. Dad hops in the driver's seat. We all slide over. We're good to go. We get to the end of the driveway. Dad's like, what's that car doing in the ditch? He's like, somebody's trying to pass us on the right. Dad's like, fuck them then. And we drove off.
Exactly.
Never forget that. It was an 84 Ford, two-tone brown. Dad's like, yep, the hell with them then. We just drove off. Just like it was no big deal. They tried to pass us on the right. Not a big deal. We just drove off. Went home. That was the end of the day.
Yep. That's just the way you rolled back
That's just the way you rolled. They can get themselves out. They try to illegally pass you on the right. We had turn signal on, flashers, the whole nine. Tried to pass us. The hell with it. Yeah, good times.
The story from my childhood that, like, it just floors Nick. He's shaking his head right now. We had this old Alice Chalmers loader tractor that we used to, we had 2 irrigations that were called towables. So they had 3, what do you call I can't remember what they're called, that you actually...
Axles, where you had to pick them up to turn the tires.
You picked up the tower,
yep,
and then turned the tower straight,
so
and then you towed them to
yep.
the next, I can't remember what
to the pivot pipe and hooked them up.
Yes. We had to do that every single day. And our big deal, and every morning we had to go help Dad do this during the summer. And we each had our job. Each of us knew what we were doing. Dad backed the loader tractor up, picked up the tower. Karen and I each had a wheel, spin around, put the bolts in, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, on the way home, we would beg Dad to let us ride in the scoop, in the bucket in the front.
Yep, done that 100 times.
Okay, see? So he would raise it up. Practice. He would raise it up and then head home. Yeah. And Nick is like, this is proof your dad did not love you. He's like, that is the most dangerous
That was the only place we rode. It really was.
Oh, no. We had like 4 kids around Dad on the seat of the tractor or
whatever.
Yeah,
because we're like, well, there's 3 of us. You can't ride on the fenders.
No.
Just sit in the bucket.
We rode, but I mean like road gear on the way home.
Well, no, we didn't do that.
My dad's big game he would play was, you rode on the fender and he would turn corners. He would come up to a wide open and he'd slam the brake and try to throw you off.
Oh, gosh.
If you lose that game, you die.
Right. There's no winners.
He's checking to see how well you were hanging on. And I'm like, it was super fun when I was a kid. I'm like, oh, here comes the corner. Dad's going to turn fast. So you grab on him. I'm like, if you lose that game, you're dead.
Right.
But it never dawned on me at the time that my dad's actually trying to kill me.
But
I always hung on. Like, you know, he plays it soft the first time. He kind of tells you the rules.
Yeah.
And after that, you're like, corner.
Yeah.
I never fell off.
It is amazing, though, how our parents, I'm not going to say they didn't care, but yet they didn't care. You know, if I send my son, like literally, if he takes off into the pasture on his 4-wheeler And I'm way better than Carolyn, but after about 15 minutes,
getting curious.
if I haven't seen him, I'm like, and I'll ask her, have you seen him go by, where's he at or whatever? She's like, well, no, I ain't seen him. So then now I'm getting a little more concerned, making sure he ain't turned it over or something. But my parents, it's like, no, you left at noon, and by like 4 o'clock, they're like, well, we're going to go home, but the kids ain't back. So they'll sit there and shoot the shit for another hour.
I had to walk out to the buildings along the highway, get the four-wheeler out, lock the buildings back up, ride the four-wheeler down the highway to the first country road, cut around to Shank Lakes Woods, rides there all day, and hopefully come back and do the same thing and then walk back. My parents were like, it's good. You're fine, right? And at the time, you're like, oh, rock on, yeah, I'm golden. But in retrospect, you're like, could have got killed there. That was a bad idea. Could have got killed there. Yeah. There's a lot of it, but we always made it through. It was fine.
I guess we need, just learn from what they did. I mean, they just didn't care.
Let it roll.
And they were right. You kids will be fine.
Yeah.
And we was.
And we were fine. Yeah,
we would go to the Illinois State Fair with my cousins, and out of the group, because there was us 3 boys, and then there was 2 of them. So out of the entire group, the oldest one would have been 12, all the way down to 5 or whatever. I would have been the youngest. And you just they're like, here's $20. We'll see you at noon. And nobody thought anything about it.
My parents would drop us off with cattle to the Illinois State Fair.
Statistics.
With like $30. Not even money they gave us. It was money probably from detasseling corn or walking beans or whatever. We had no place to stay. We had a duffel bag of clothes, and we're like, we'll find somewhere to stay. Some parent who has a camper down here will let us sleep on the floor. And we would be there for 2 or 3 days, and then mom and dad would come down for show day.
Yeah. I dare you to try that this summer with your kids.
Like, just drop them off at
$30
with 1,200-pound steers for them to take care of.
Kelly, tell me when you're dropping them off. I'll make sure they're. I have nothing, but I'll take care of them.
Max will beat us home.
Yeah.
It's like we used to go. The first time we went to Missouri, 4-wheeler riding or whatever, at a 200X 3-wheeler. These hills are super big, in my mind. My 3 was back, fired up, I immediately take off. Zoom up and down, come back. Dad's got his all warmed up. He's good to go. He's like, hey, that hill's pretty steep. Don't go up those. Shouldn't be doing that. And I'm 12 at the time, probably. Like, I already been up it twice. He's like, oh, no shit. I'm like, yeah, been up it twice. He's like, I guess you don't tell your mom. Have a good time. Ride the rest of the day up these literally mountains.
Right. And not to mention the fact that you rode in the back of the truck all the way to Missouri.
Yeah, we rode in the back of the truck all the way from my house to Missouri. Back of the truck.
A couple-hour drive.
And he's like, no, you're good.
What was the name of the TV show that we watched for a while with Frank and...
Shameless.
So our favorite line from that entire series, all 8 or 9 season, whatever, is when Frank is telling someone how to be a good parent. He goes, at the end of the day, being a good parent is just being a little bit negligent.
And he's right.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, I love my parents, but yeah.
That's true.
And we had a camper
We were in church every Sunday, like Sunday school, et cetera. We worked, et cetera.
Yep. Same here.
But a little bit negligent here or there by today's standards.
And to be honest with you, my parents were probably stricter on us than their parents were on them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Dad,
sure.
I mean, my dad come from a family of 15 kids. It was mass chaos.
Yeah.
And of course, Grandpa worked of a day, so he was gone. And I don't care how good of a mom you are, you're not going to manage a mob of kids. Which, granted, all 15 of them kids were at home at the same time. They were strung out enough.
But still.
But nonetheless, there was still a bunch of kids at home at any given time.
Yeah.
And you live in the country on a farm. Access to guns, anything you want at very young ages.
Yeah.
And they turned out fine,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to say they had no parenting, but it was very, very hands-off
parenting. A lot of
parenting
parenting was my older siblings. I'll never forget, in our younger days, before we could drive, and I don't even know how we got to your house. So we were out at a buddy's woods that we always hung out at, and we went to see if Tony wanted to go, because it's before cell phones. We couldn't call Tony.
Yeah, because we'd been like, 14, 15 years old?
Yeah, somewhere right in there. So I think we rode our 4-wheelers to your house, knock on Tony's door, hey, Tony, you want to come to the woods, spend the night? Tony's like, nah, I'm good. We'd have been 14 because your brother's 2 years older. He just had his license.
That's right.
Tony's like, nah, I'm good. My parents will let me go out tonight. I'm good. So we hop on our four-wheelers. I guess Tony ain't in. We ride back to the woods. About 10 minutes later, here comes Tony. His parents ask him, what Nick and Brock want? Oh, they want me to go over the woods, but I didn't figure you'd let me. Like, oh, you bum, you're not going to hang out here all the time. Alan, drive him over there. So Alan had to drive him over there to where we're hanging out, where we literally had no phone, no water, no food. We had four-wheelers.
And we did donuts in my brother's car and we blew it up.
And then it jump started off a tiller.
Right.
The only other engine on that farm was a pull start tiller.
Tony's parents saw his antisocial behavior and were like, no, that's not no, go out there. You're doing all the things. So good thing your parents did that, right, Kelly?
Yeah, that was our weekend.
I don't regret my childhood.
We didn't go home for 2 days.
Yeah.
Oh, see, and I wish
that was on a Friday. We didn't go home till Sunday.
I don't regret my childhood all the way. I don't regret anything. No. If I died tomorrow, I don't regret anything that I've done in life. I've had a blast. It really has. I come from a great family. My parents are still married to this day. I didn't have to go through the divorce deal.
Yeah.
You know, I'm very
married
fortunate.
a really amazing wife.
Exactly. But from all them aspects, I really, and at the time, it always seemed like you had the short end of the stick. It's like, God damn, look what everybody else
had it better, but
looking back now, it's like, I don't care. They could have had all the video games, all the shit they wanted.
Because you appreciate what you have more now.
Well, I think you do, but back then also, it just made you be one of them kids that you use your imagination. You've done. And I'm not for one instant going to say that I grew up hard or poor or whatever, because that wasn't the case. But we just grew up fun.
I'll never forget going out to Chank's Woods and being like, here's a bucket of bullets, 22s, literally 500 rounds. Have a good weekend.
Yeah.
And we literally shoot 500 rounds into random trees.
Right.
With 5 other guys that had 500 bullets.
Yeah.
Nobody got shot. And we come back 2 days later, smiles on our faces. We take shotguns, just shoot trees in halves.
Yeah,
we just shoot them in half.
Just
hunting nothing. We're just shooting trees.
Yep.
Walking around through the woods, 5 guys with shotguns.
I know, and all I can think is, oh my gosh, they're going to shoot each other.
Now I'm like, oh, Max is going to take an airsoft gun out. That's a bad idea.
Nope, bad idea.
I'm like, in our day, we just blew trees in half.
Yeah,
that's what we did for fun.
Here, son, here's a bomb. Go up the fucking neighborhood.
Yeah, it's fine. You'll be all right.
Yeah.
We got Max and Colby. What do they call?
I don't know where you're going.
The camping. I can't think of it. Sleeping bags. That's what it's called. Sorry, sleeping bags. Really technical term there. Hard one to remember. But anyway, they got those for Christmas, and Max is like, he was almost mad. He's like, why would I? You could tell he was just mad when he unwrapped it. And so later I was like, what were you upset about? And he's like, I don't know, why did I get a sleeping bag for Christmas, And he had come over and camped at your house in the tent, just in the yard. He thought that was the greatest thing ever. And I was like, well, Dad and I thought that we would get you a tent so you could sleep with your friends out in the cattle pasture, the horse pasture, woods, even the woods beyond, And he's like, okay, this makes sense. That'll be fun. But at first he was like, this is the dumbest gift ever. Why would you give me a sleeping bag?
Like, why are you taking my mattress?
Yeah.
But the funny thing is, though, about kids again, do you remember, and I'm going to guess we were 10 years old. So at the Sturtson Carnival, every year when they had the tractor pull in the carnival, we're talking a town of 700 people, the carnies come in. You could throw darts at the balloons.
Yep.
And we were 10 years old. You could win a fucking survival knife.
Yeah.
I'm talking a fucking knife with a 10-inch blade.
Yeah.
You pop 3 balloons, you got a survival knife. Can you imagine that now? No. Let's roll into town in a carny wagon. Yeah. By God, you pop 3 balloons here, son. Here's a fucking 10-inch blade knife. Mm-hmm. Go for it. Not a chance. Now you're going to win a teddy bear.
I still got a scar on my hand from one of those right there.
Those were the shit when we were kids. They had a compass, a saw, matches.
They had everything with them.
They were
Rambo.
a true survival knife. Rambo. They were dull as fuck, but they were true survival knives.
Yes, Rambo. Good times.
Is anybody still on there watching?
We're down to 85 people.
Still though.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, goodness.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, it's probably getting late
Yeah.
enough.
I'm
Probably
getting
wrap
pretty
it up.
tired.
Are you?
So.
Well, you got a big day
I
tomorrow.
have a big day tomorrow, so.
Yeah. Caroline has a big day.
Oh yeah, she does.
I do. I have to take
I've
our
got a
kids
long day
to-
of editing video, but
They're going to sleep in and do nothing.
probably.
Exactly.
That's fine.
Yeah, Chase Kelly tells me to find something else to do and then go do that and eat lunch.
Yep.
Yep, so.
Yep. Yeah, I guess. Damn, it's actually been longer than I thought.
Yes.
How
For a
long
short-
is this
for-
one? For the short
for a
round.
short one.
An hour and 20 minutes.
Yeah, we're $1.20 on this one.
We'll
Which
have
is,
to-
this is the shortest one we've done all night. I think that second one was like 2 hours. And
Was it
it
really?
was a long.
You'll have that on those big jobs.
Oh yeah, for sure.
We got a lot of questions, Kelly.
Yep. So
People want to know.
Might have to. I'll think tomorrow of all these other stories that I should tell. We'll do.
Well, you
I'll
can
have to
do
do a part two. I'll be
yeah.
like, I thought of 7 other stories that are
this
just
won't
great.
be the last. This won't be the last. Trust me.
You've enjoyed it.
It'll
It's
be
fine.
your least popular podcast,
Oh,
and you'll
no.
be like,
Oh,
"Oh,
no.
it is the last, Kelly.
It
is."
never fails. The ones that you think, man, that one wasn't very good, are the number one.
Yeah, it'll be fine.
Yeah. We're good. So,
All right,
it
folks,
sounds like
well-
we're going to kick her off here. My phone is literally dead. I'm down to 3%, I think. But yeah, this podcast has ran way long. So, thanks for tuning in on the podcast and on TikTok Live. For those of you listening on the podcast, we've been TikTok Live in this whole deal. So,
Yeah, you
thanks
missed
to-
out.
Yeah. So, thanks to everybody who's tuned in. We will see you guys next time.
Later.
See ya.